They laughed when she said it. "I'm adopting a boy from the streets. I've got 2 weeks to live." They thought it was a joke, or worse, a sign she'd lost it. But Coral Medley, the richest woman in the city, didn't laugh back. She just smiled and disappeared into the night. What happened next shocked the world. And it's not what you think. Coral Medley had no kids, no one waiting at home. All she had was time, and not much of it. The doctors said 14 days. Stage 4. No hope. He smiled anyway. Not because she was brave, but because she had already made up his mind. She'd give herself 10 days to fix something the world didn't know she broke. 10 days to leave behind more than a name on a building. Something real. Something alive. On the first night, she left behind his mansion, his phones, the cameras, wore an old coat, walked alone, past the blinking lights, past the clean sidewalks, into places his money never touched. He moved through alleys that smelled like rust and rain, past flickering street lamps and burned-out buildings, past people who didn't know or care who she was. Then she saw him, a boy, maybe 10 or 11, sitting with his back against a wall, knees pulled to his chest, bare feet, dirty hands, shirt 2 sizes too big, clinging to his skinny frame. The boy didn't cry. He didn't beg. He just stared. Coral stopped walking, looked down at him for a long second, then sat on the curb just a few feet away. No talking, no reaching. Minutes passed. Still, the boy said nothing. His eyes stayed locked on Coral's, unblinking, untrusting. Coral broke the silence. "What's your name?" she asked gently. The boy didn't answer, didn't flinch, didn't even blink. Just stared, like she'd heard that question 1,000 times and never once believed it meant anything. Coral sighed, not in frustration, but in recognition. He saw it, the fire, the fight, the sadness too heavy for someone so small. "You remind me of someone," she whispered. "Someone I should have never let go." Another silence. A truck passed behind them, headlights flashing over the boy's face. Coral reached into his coat, slowly, no sudden moves, pulled out a wrapped sandwich. "I'm not here to hurt you," she said, placing it between them. "I'm here to offer you a deal." The boy looked at the food, then at him, then back at the dark streets. "I've got 10 days, Coral said. "Not much time, but maybe enough to do something right." Still nothing, just silence and suspicion. Coral stood up, dusted off his coat. "Come with me," she said, voice calm. "Let's change everything." He turned and walked away. And for a moment, it seemed like that was it, like the boy would vanish into the shadows. But then, soft steps followed behind. No words, no questions, just footsteps. And that was enough. The boy didn't trust him yet. Not fully. But for the first time in a long time, he chose to follow. The news hit like lightning. The richest man in the city had adopted a street kid days before death. No lawyers, no press conference, just one photo. Coral Medley, in an old coat, walking beside a barefoot boy into a limousine. People didn't understand, so they made jokes. He's finally lost it. Guess the cancer hit his brain. Of all the kids she could have picked, why that one? The tabloids had a field day. Some called it a publicity stunt. Others whispered rumors about a secret hair, a hidden scandal. A few simply laughed and said Coral was dying alone and desperate. But Coral didn't care. She didn't read the papers, didn't answer calls. He stayed home, with the boy. Crane Manor, usually cold and silent, now echoed with life. Small feet on marble floors, the crackle of a fireplace, a fork clinking against a plate as the boy learned to eat with proper utensils. At first, the boy barely spoke. She watched everything. Every shadow, every face. Even the maids found him strange, never asking for toys or cartoons. just sitting by the window, staring at the trees like they were hiding answers. Coral noticed. She didn't push. Instead, she told stories. Each night, after dinner, Coral would sit in his library, and the boy, always barefoot, would curl up on the rug, listening. "I've made a lot of deals," Coral would begin, voice rough from age. Some with men in suits, some with devils in disguise. He spoke of places the boy had never heard of: war zones, boardrooms, deserts full of diamonds, towers full of lies. And woven through it all were the same three things: power, pain, and regret. Sometimes Coral would trail off in the middle of a sentence, get lost in thought, then smile sadly and say, "You remind me of someone I lost." The boy would glance up, curious, but not bold enough to ask who. Not yet. But she was listening, deeply. He began asking for the same stories again, memorizing them, piecing them together like clues. Coral noticed that too. One night, Coral coughed hard, too hard. The boy ran to his side without thinking. And that was when Coral saw it. Not just fear in the boy's eyes, but something deeper. Loyalty. Not bought, not earned, just given. Coral placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. "I don't know if I can fix everything in time," she said softly. "But I can give you a head start." The boy looked up, finally speaking. "Why me?" Coral smiled, eyes glassy but sharp. "You're not the first to ask that," she whispered. "But you might be the first to understand the answer." Outside, the world kept laughing. But inside that old mansion, something was shifting. Something neither man nor boy could fully name yet. But it was real. And it was just beginning. The house was full of things older than the boy had words for. Paintings, statues, books thick as bricks. But none of it made him feel anything. Until the night she stepped on a loose floorboard. It creaked strange, hollow. Curious, she knelt and pried it up. Beneath the wood was a box, small but heavy. Metal, rusted edges, a strange symbol carved into the top. It had no handle, no clue, just a keyhole. He didn't open it. Not yet. Instead, she hid it under his bed and waited, watched Coral more closely. The old man was fading fast. His voice, once sharp and full of bite, now cracked when she spoke. His skin looked thinner. His hands trembled when she held his teacup. But his eyes stayed sharp. And the boy noticed other things too. In the drawers, envelopes with his name, dated from years ago, long before they'd ever met. Letters she couldn't understand, written in ruched handwriting. Some smudged like tears had fallen on the ink. In a photo album, buried behind dusty books, black and white pictures of a baby. His baby face. Same eyes. Same scar near the eyebrow. Held in the arms of a younger Coral. The boy's heart pounded. He flipped the photo over. No name. Just one word, scribbled in fading pen. Mine. That night, she couldn't sleep. She didn't eat. She just sat outside Coral's bedroom door, waiting. When the door creaked open in the morning, Coral saw him. She didn't look surprised. "Found the box, didn't you?" she said, coughing. The boy nodded. Coral looked away, staring out the tall window. The sky was gray. The kind of gray that meant time was up. He sat down slowly on the edge of his bed and motioned the boy closer. "I tried to find you sooner," she said. "But your mother," she ran, disappeared. The boy froze. Coral sighed. "She thought I'd ruin you. That I'd raise you into a world of power and pain. She wanted you free. But the world didn't stay kind, did it?" The boy's throat tightened, but she said nothing. Coral reached into the drawer beside his bed and pulled out a key. Gold. Small. Cold. He pressed it into the boy's hand. "When I'm gone," she whispered, voice thin as paper, "open it. And run." The boy looked down at the key. His fingers clenched it like it might disappear. "Run where?" she asked. Coral gave a weak smile. "To the truth." Later that night, the boy sat in the dark with the box beside him. His fingers hovered near the keyhole. But she waited, because the one thing stronger than curiosity was love. And the boy wasn't ready to lose the only person who had ever truly seen him. Not yet. But soon. Coral Medley died just after sunrise. No cameras, no ceremony, no final words. The staff left quietly. The doctors didn't linger. There was no funeral, no "we'll read in a poly sheet room." Just silence, and one small boy, sitting alone at the edge of a giant bed, holding a golden key in his hand. It was time. His heart thudded as she slid the key into the lock of the box. Click. He opened it slowly, like it might explode. Inside were papers, dozens of them. Faded maps, a worn birth certificate, his real name printed in bold, not the one given on the streets, the one Coral had written in the old letters. There was a photograph, his mother, smiling with Coral's arm around her shoulders. And then, a sealed envelope, no name, just 3 words scrawled across the front. Run. Trust no one. The boy barely had time to read it before the doorbell rang. Then the front gate slammed. Voices echoed. Men in suits, black cars outside, faces that didn't smile. They moved fast, too fast. He grabbed the box and ran. Down the back stairs, through the kitchen, out the servants' gate Coral had shown him weeks ago. Only if it ever gets bad, she'd said. It had gotten bad. He ran through alleys soaked in rain. Smoke filled the air from somewhere far off. Sirens blared behind him. The wind whipped his face, and his lungs screamed, but she didn't stop. The letterhead said run, and she did. But where? He remembered Coral's warning. Never go near the courthouse. So that's where she went. He burst into the lobby, soaking wet, holding the metal box like a bomb. People stared. One guard stepped forward. "I need to see the records," the boy shouted. "Cranes. Coral Medley." At first, no one listened. Then she dropped the birth certificate on the counter. Everything changed. A phone call. A silent nod. A door opened. He was led down a hallway into a cold office. There, under glass, were sealed papers Coral had left behind. Signed. Stamped. Legal. The boy looked at them, barely understanding the words. But one thing was clear. His name. Over and over. As heir. As owner. The staff whispered. Phones rang. Lawyers blinked in disbelief. This wasn't a trick. This boy, this silent, barefoot, nameless boy, was now the legal heir to Coral Medley's entire empire. The companies, the patents, the land, the name, everything. And the people in suits who had chased him. They weren't there to protect Coral's legacy. They were there to erase it. His hands trembled as she held the letter again. Run. Trust no one. The boy looked around. Even here, even now, she felt the walls closing in. Because Coral hadn't just passed down money. She passed down enemies. But the boy didn't flinch. Because now she understood. He wasn't hiding anymore. He was claiming what was already his. And that changed everything. The headlines exploded. Street boy inherits billion-dollar empire. Crane's last act. Madness or masterstroke. Mystery hair sparks legal war. Reporters swarmed the courthouse. Analysts argued on TV. Social media turned the boy into a meme, a joke, a legend. He's a thief. It's a hoax. He must have tricked the old man. But they were wrong. Behind closed doors, a judge reviewed the sealed letter Coral had left behind. The room fell silent as it was opened. The paper shook in the judge's hands. The boy sat still, wearing a black suit 2 sizes too big, sleeves folded up, shoes borrowed. The judge cleared his throat and read aloud. "This boy is my blood, my son, my second chance." Gasps. The court reporter dropped her pen. One of the lawyers cursed under his breath. But the boy didn't move. His face stayed calm, focused. The truth hit like thunder. Years ago, Coral had fallen in love with a woman no one in his world approved of. Young, brilliant, black, kind-hearted but unafraid of power. When she became pregnant, Coral promised to protect her. But greed and fear crept in. Coral's business partners whispered threats. His enemies watched closely. And one day, she vanished. No note, no trace, just gone. He searched for years, quietly, secretly. Every corner of the city, every clue, every whispered lead. But nothing. Until the night she saw a boy on the street with her eyes and his jaw. That moment broke him, and healed him at the same time. He didn't just see a child in pain. He saw the ghost of a life she should have had, a future she refused to lose again. So Coral acted fast. He adopted the boy, transferred everything, wrote a will so ironclad no one could touch it, and left behind the one thing more powerful than money: proof. When the judge finished reading, the room stayed quiet. For the first time, the world stopped laughing, because they understood now. This wasn't madness. It was redemption. Later that week, the boy stood in front of Coral's company headquarters. Cameras flashed. Crowds gathered. He wore the same oversized suit. He stepped up to the podium, looked out at a sea of eyes that had doubted him, mocked him, chased him. He took a breath. "My father didn't die," she said, voice clear. "He passed me the torch." And just like that, the world flipped. They saw not a boy from the streets, but a son. Not an accident, but a legacy. Not a joke, but a beginning. In the days that followed, some people still grumbled. Some tried to take it from him. But she held steady, because she had already survived the street, the silence, the chase. This was his storm now. And she was ready to lead, from nothing to everything. From silence to strength, from being laughed at to leading. They saw a boy from the streets, barefoot, broken, forgotten. He became the voice of a man who'd lived with power but died with purpose. This wasn't about money. It was about something deeper. Legacy, truth, redemption. For the boy, wealth meant nothing. Not the mansion, not the title, not the towers with his name on them. What mattered were the questions finally answered. He wasn't a mistake. She wasn't abandoned. He was searched for, fought for, loved in silence. And that truth did more for him than any empire could. He remembered nights sleeping on concrete, flinching at every sound, learning never to trust a kind face. He remembered the cold, not just in his skin, but in his heart. He remembered wishing for someone, anyone, to say, "You matter." And then came Coral, a man with only days to live, but a heart full of regret. A man who saw not just a boy, but a mirror, a memory, a chance to set something right. Coral didn't just leave behind buildings and stock shares. He left behind meaning. In a world where people choose legacy through money, through fame, through statues carved in stone, Coral chose a boy. A living legacy. A second chance walking and breathing and becoming more than either of them imagined. And the boy, he didn't become some poly sheet puppet, smiling for cameras. He became something more dangerous. Honest, brave, free. He made the people who laughed eat their words. He turned boardrooms into classrooms. He tore down walls that kept people out and built doors that welcomed them in. He turned Coral Medley's empire into a machine not for greed, but for good. Because she knew what it meant to be left behind. And she swore no one else would be. He didn't need revenge. She didn't need applause. He needed purpose. So she told his story, raw, real, and unfiltered. And the world listened, because it wasn't a fairy tale. It was a fight, a truth, a flame lit in darkness. People still whispered, "He got lucky. It won't last." "He's just a kid." But she smiled. Not because she agreed, but because they didn't matter anymore. He wasn't trying to prove them wrong. He was proving Coral right. And in doing that, she made peace with the past, power in the present, and a future bigger than any one man could build alone. Some inherit money. Some inherit names. He inherited a mission. And that mission wasn't about becoming someone. It was about remembering who she already was. The boy from the street. He never disappeared. He just put on a suit, stood tall, and took the world by storm. Everyone laughed, until they didn't. He didn't rise for glory. She rose because no one else would. So now ask yourself, if you were given just 10 days, what would you leave behind? Not in your bank, not on your resume, but in someone's heart. Don't just scroll past. Share this story with someone who needs a reminder. You're not what you've lost. You're what you choose to become. The world said I had nothing. But my father gave me something better than wealth. He gave me a reason to stand. And I haven't sat down since. A clean, sunlit office. The boy, now older, stands by a wall covered in photos. Not of boardrooms, not of parties, but of shelters, schools, faces like his. He runs his fingers over one picture, Coral, holding him the day they met. A young girl enters the room. She's barefoot, quiet, scared. He kneels down, smiles gently, and says, "What's your name?" Legacy isn't what you leave behind. It's who you lift up.